The old warship drifted through space like a battle-scarred veteran, its hull bearing the marks of countless missions. The Defiant Spirit wasn't pretty, it never had been. Its asymmetrical design made it stand out among the sleek, standardized vessels of the Galactic Defense Fleet. Some called it ugly. Others called it a mistake. But to Captain James Miller, it was the finest ship in the fleet, even if headquarters had just labeled it obsolete. Miller stood at the bridge's viewing window, his weathered hands clasped behind his back, as he watched the latest batch of cadets snicker at his ship from their passing transport. The morning light from a nearby star caught the Defiant Spirit's unusual angles, highlighting the off-center weapon mounts that had earned so much criticism over the years. Another group of youngsters having a laugh at our expense, sir. First Officer Tom Wilson joined his captain at the window. Unlike the pristine uniforms worn by officers on newer ships, Wilson's collar showed signs of repair, a perfect match for their vessel's worn appearance. "Let them laugh," Miller said, a slight smile crossing his face. "They don't know what this old girl can do." He turned away from the window and walked to his command chair, settling into the familiar cushion that had molded itself to his form over 15 years of service. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, each one chosen specifically because they saw beyond appearances. They were the misfits of the fleet, officers passed over for promotion because they asked too many questions, technicians who modified equipment in ways that made their supervisors nervous. Miller had handpicked every one of them. "Message from Fleet Command, Captain," announced Lisa Reed from the communication station. Her fingers, calloused from years of stringed instrument playing, danced across the console with unusual grace. "They're sending our final assignment before decommissioning." The word decommissioning hung in the air like a death sentence. Miller nodded, keeping his face neutral even as his stomach tightened. "Put it on screen." The message was brief, and to Miller's mind, insulting. The Defiant Spirit was to escort 3 civilian transport ships through what was considered safe space, a milk run designed to let the old warship die quietly. "Well," Wilson said, trying to sound optimistic, "at least it's not immediate deactivation. We've got one last mission." Before Miller could respond, the engineering communication line crackled to life. "Captain, got a minute?" Chief Engineer Ann Roberts' voice carried its usual mix of enthusiasm and mischief. "There's something down here you should see." Miller exchanged a knowing look with Wilson. In the decade since Roberts had joined the crew, these something-you-should-see moments had become legendary. Each one represented another modification that pushed the boundaries of what a warship could do, and usually violated about 6 different fleet regulations. "On my way," Miller replied, rising from his chair. "Wilson, you have the bridge." The journey to engineering took longer than it would on other ships. The Defiant Spirit's corridors didn't follow the standard layout, instead twisting in ways that had initially confused even experienced crew members. But Miller had come to appreciate how the unusual design created natural defensive positions and redundant access routes to critical areas. He found Roberts half buried in an access panel, her boots the only part of her visible. Tools floated in the zero-gravity workspace around her, held in place by weak magnetic fields. "What have you done now, Ann?" Miller asked, unable to keep the affection out of his voice. Roberts had been his best recruit, a brilliant engineer whose ideas were too radical for the fleet's conservative design bureaus. She extracted herself from the panel, her gray-streaked hair escaping its tight bun. "Remember how they said the power distribution system was fundamentally flawed?" Her eyes sparkled with the joy of someone about to prove conventional wisdom wrong. "Well, I finally figured out why the designers built it this way, and it's brilliant." Roberts launched into an explanation that, like many of her discoveries, challenged everything the fleet thought it knew about starship design. The Defiant Spirit's irregular power grid wasn't a mistake. It was an innovation ahead of its time. With the right modifications Roberts had spent years secretly implementing, it could channel energy in ways other ships couldn't dream of. "It's like having 3 hearts instead of 1, she explained, pulling up a diagram on her tablet. The asymmetrical layout means we can lose 2/3 of our power system and still keep critical functions running. But that's not even the best part. She swiped to another screen, showing power flow simulations. We can also surge energy to any section almost instantly, without the usual power-up sequence. Miller studied the diagrams, a slow smile spreading across his face. They're decommissioning us because they think this ship is outdated and inefficient. If they only knew, Roberts grinned. I've got similar improvements all over the ship. Those off-center weapon mounts everyone hates. They actually give us firing angles that conventional targeting systems can't predict. The inefficient life support layout. It's actually more resilient than anything in the modern fleet. A voice from the bridge interrupted their conversation. Captain to the bridge. We're receiving the civilian transport coordinates for the escort mission. Looks like we'll have one last chance to appreciate your improvements, Anne, Miller said, turning to leave. About that, sir. Robert's voice made him pause. I know we're supposed to go quietly, but I've got a few more surprises ready to install. Things I've been saving for a special occasion. If this is going to be our last mission, maybe it's time to show what this ship can really do. Miller looked back at his chief engineer, seeing the same spark of defiance that had drawn him to this unconventional ship in the first place. The defiant spirit had been called many things, a mistake, a relic, an embarrassment to the fleet. But Miller knew better. In Robert's modifications and the ship's unusual design, he saw something else. Potential that nobody else had bothered to understand. Do it, he said finally. If they're going to retire us, let's make sure they remember us. As he walked back to the bridge, Miller felt a familiar sense of pride. The defiant spirit might not have been the prettiest ship in the fleet, might not have followed all the rules of proper warship design, but it had something special. His crew didn't just maintain this ship, they understood it, improved it, believed in it. The bridge doors slid open, revealing the standard pre-mission bustle. Wilson looked up from the tactical station. Civilian transports are ready for escorts, sir. Standard formation. Miller settled into his command chair, thinking about Robert's hidden modifications and the ship's unconventional capabilities. No, he said, surprising his first officer. Let's try something different. After all, this is our last chance to show what the defiant spirit can really do. As the crew prepared for their final mission, none of them could have known that their obsolete asymmetrical warship was about to face a challenge that would prove every critic wrong. The defiant spirit might have been scheduled for decommissioning, but fate, and Engineer Robert's unconventional modifications, had other plans. The escort mission started smoothly enough. The 3 civilian transports fell into formation behind the defiant spirit, their sleek hulls reflecting starlight like polished mirrors. These were new ships, built for comfort rather than combat, carrying colonists to the outer settlements. Captain Miller watched them on the main screen, noting how their pilots kept more distance than necessary from his unconventional vessel. They're probably afraid we'll fall apart and crash into them, Wilson joked from his station, voicing what everyone on the bridge was thinking. Miller was about to respond when Lisa Reed's voice cut through the quiet bridge atmosphere. Captain, I'm picking up something strange at the edge of our sensor range. Her fingers moved quickly across her console. It's not matching any known signal patterns. Put it through the main speakers, Miller ordered, leaning forward in his chair. The bridge filled with an odd, pulsing sound that made the hair on the back of Miller's neck stand up. It wasn't like anything he'd heard in his 15 years of space travel. Multiple objects just dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the sensor operator announced, his voice tense. Big ones. They're arranging themselves in an attack formation. The main screen shifted to show a group of ships unlike anything in human records. They were massive, their hulls covered in what looked like overlapping plates of dark metal. As the crew watched, more vessels appeared, each one larger than the last. Incoming transmission, Reed reported. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. The voice that filled the bridge was deep and mechanical, likely translated by artificial means. Attention human vessels. You have entered space claimed by the Stellar Dominion. Surrender immediately or be destroyed. You have 30 seconds to comply. Miller's mind raced. They were in what was supposed to be safe space, well within human territory. Either these aliens had no idea where they were, or they didn't care. Either way, the 4 civilian transports under his protection held over 2,000 colonists. "Sir," Wilson said quietly, "our weapons were never fully restored after the last maintenance cycle. Fleet Command didn't think we'd need them for this mission." A smile crossed Miller's face. "Good thing Anne's been busy then, isn't it?" He pressed the engineering comm button. "Roberts, please tell me you've got something special ready for us." "Oh, you bet I do, Captain." Her voice carried an excitement that would have worried Miller if he didn't trust her completely. "Remember those power distribution modifications I showed you? They're not just for show. All ships, evasive maneuvers," Miller commanded as the 30-second deadline expired. The alien vessels opened fire, their weapons releasing streams of energy that cut through space like liquid lightning. The civilian ships scattered in panic, their captains trying desperately to escape. One transport took a glancing hit to its engine section, sending it spinning. The Defiant Spirit moved to protect it, and that's when Robert's modifications showed their worth. The asymmetrical weapon mounts, long mocked as a design flaw, allowed the Defiant Spirit to fire from angles the alien ships clearly weren't expecting. Their first volley caught one of the smaller enemy vessels completely by surprise, slipping through a gap in its shields that shouldn't have existed. "Their targeting systems are confused," Wilson reported, excitement creeping into his voice. "They can't get a solid lock on us. Something about our power signature is throwing them off." Robert's voice came through again. "That's because we're not playing by the rules, sir. Every other human ship follows the same power distribution patterns. We don't. Their computers can't predict where we'll be vulnerable because we're never vulnerable in the same place twice." The battle intensified as more alien ships joined the fight. The Defiant Spirit danced between them, its unconventional design now proving to be its greatest asset. When the aliens expected them to be reinforcing forward shields, Roberts redirected power to weapons instead. When they thought the ship would need to pause to cool its weapons, the irregular power grid allowed for continuous fire. "Status of the civilian ships," Miller demanded, gripping his chair as another blast rocked the ship. "2 have made it to faster than light speed," Reed reported. "The 3rd is still having engine troubles. The 4th," she paused. "The 4th is surrounded." Miller looked at the tactical display. The surrounded transport carried over 500 colonists, mostly families. The alien ships were closing in, their weapons charged. "Anne," Miller called over the comm, "remember when you said you had a few surprises saved for a special occasion?" "Already on it, Captain." There was the sound of rushing movement from her end. "You know those power surges the fleet always warned could blow up the ship. Turns out they were half right. We can create a surge, but instead of blowing ourselves up, we can direct it. Give me 2 minutes." Those 2 minutes were the longest of Miller's life. The Defiant Spirit took hit after hit, its shields holding thanks to the unpredictable power distribution. The crew worked with practiced efficiency, taking advantage of every quirk and flaw that made their ship different. "Ready," Roberts shouted. "But sir, this is going to drain almost everything we've got. We'll be running on emergency power for at least 30 seconds after." Miller watched as another alien blast nearly hit the civilian transport. "Do it." The Defiant Spirit's lights dimmed, and for a moment, everything went quiet. Then the ship released a pulse of energy, unlike anything the crew had ever seen. It spread out in an asymmetrical pattern, following the same irregular layout as the ship's power grid. The alien vessels, their computers designed to defend against standard attack patterns, couldn't adapt in time. The pulse overloaded their shields, creating gaps just long enough for the trapped transport to slip through. As soon as it was clear, The transport's engines flared to life, and it vanished into faster-than-light speed. The Defiant Spirit hung in space, its systems slowly coming back online. The alien ships, their formation broken and several vessels showing significant damage, began to regroup. "They're charging weapons," Wilson reported. "All of them. I don't think we can take another hit until our power recovers." Miller watched the alien ships, a calm settling over him. "We don't need to. We just proved something they didn't expect. An old, supposedly obsolete human warship could stand against their best technology." He smiled. "And if we could do it with a ship they thought was worthless, imagine what they'll face when they meet our actual battle fleet." As if understanding his words, the alien vessels began to pull back. Their retreat was orderly but quick, suggesting they were reassessing their strategy. "Transmission from Fleet Command," Reed announced. "They're picking up our distress signal. Battle group incoming in 10 minutes. She paused, listening to her headset. "Sir, they're asking how an escort ship scheduled for decommissioning just fought off an alien fleet." Miller looked around his bridge, at the crew that had believed in this unusual ship when no one else would. "Tell them the truth. Sometimes the best ships are the ones that break all the rules." He pressed the engineering comm one more time. "Anne, I think you better get ready to explain to a lot of admirals why breaking their regulations just saved 2,000 lives." The Defiant Spirit's systems hummed back to life, its irregular power grid proving once again that different didn't mean wrong. As they waited for reinforcements, Miller knew this wasn't the end. The Stellar Dominion would be back, and next time, they'd bring more ships. But now, humanity knew something vital. Sometimes the best defense was the one the enemy never saw coming. The Defiant Spirit's bridge buzzed with activity as fleet command ships arrived through faster-than-light jumps. Miller watched the newest, most advanced human warships take defensive positions around his battered vessel. The contrast between their sleek, standardized designs and his asymmetrical ship had never been more apparent. Admiral Thompson's hologram appeared on the bridge, his expression a mix of confusion and reluctant admiration. "Captain Miller, your ship was supposed to be on a simple escort mission. Instead, you've triggered first contact with an aggressive alien species and somehow survived a battle that should have destroyed your outdated vessel. Explain." Before Miller could respond, the ship shuddered. Robert's voice came through the comm system, more excited than worried. "Captain, you might want to get down here. Remember those modifications I mentioned? Well, they're starting to show some interesting side effects." Miller looked at the Admiral's hologram. "Sir, with your permission, I need to check engineering. Our chief engineer has some information that might be crucial to understanding how we survived." The Admiral nodded, his curiosity evident. "I'll come with you. Virtually, at least." The trip to engineering revealed corridors filled with repair crews dealing with battle damage. But unlike standard ships where damage meant systems failure, the Defiant Spirit's irregular layout had prevented any critical failures. When one power conduit was hit, the unusual grid simply rerouted through paths that shouldn't have existed. They found Robert standing in front of a large holographic display, her hands moving through complex power flow diagrams. "Captain, remember how I said our power distribution system was special? Well, the battle pushed it beyond anything I expected. Look at this." The display showed energy patterns flowing through the ship in ways that defied standard physics. Where normal ships had predictable power signatures, the Defiant Spirit's energy moved like water finding new paths through rock. "It's learning," Roberts explained, her eyes bright with discovery. "The irregular layout isn't just different, it's adaptable. Each time the enemy hit us, the power grid found new ways to distribute energy. That's why their targeting systems couldn't predict our weak points. We never had the same weak point twice." Admiral Thompson's hologram moved closer to the display. "That's impossible. Ship systems don't learn and adapt on their own." "They do if you let them," Roberts countered. "Every other ship in the fleet forces power to flow in predetermined patterns. We let it find its own way." She pulled up more diagrams. And that's just the beginning. Those weapon mounts everyone laughed at. They create firing patterns that no defense system is programmed to handle. Our shields don't just block attacks. They deflect energy in ways that confuse enemy sensors. Miller watched the Admiral's face as Roberts continued her explanation. The old man's expression shifted from skepticism to understanding and finally to something like wonder. The Stellar Dominion ships, Miller added, they were built around predictability. Their entire battle strategy relied on knowing exactly how their opponents would behave. But the defiant spirit, he smiled. We're what happens when you break all the rules they built their strategies around. A loud bang echoed through engineering, followed by a spray of sparks from a nearby panel. Instead of rushing to fix it, Roberts grinned. Watch this, she said. The ship's systems responded automatically, power flowing through unexpected pathways to bypass the damage. Within seconds, the affected systems were running at full capacity again, using circuits and connections that weren't even on the official ship blueprints. I've been adding these modifications for years, Roberts admitted to the Admiral. Small changes that built on the ship's original, unusual design. Each one broke some regulation or engineering principle. But together, they've created something unique, a warship that can think for itself. The Admiral's hologram flickered as he processed this information. You deliberately violated fleet regulations regarding ship modifications. Every single one of them, Roberts said proudly. And those violations just saved 2,000 civilian lives. Before the Admiral could respond, the ship's alert system activated. Lysa Reed's voice came through the comm. Multiple Stellar Dominion ships just dropped out of faster-than-light travel. They've brought something big. Miller and Roberts rushed back to the bridge, the Admiral's hologram following. The main screen showed what had triggered the alert. A massive Dominion vessel, easily 3 times the size of anything they'd seen before. It's their command ship, Wilson reported from his station. They're broadcasting on all frequencies again. The same mechanical voice from before filled the bridge, but now it carried a note of frustration. Your irregular vessel has violated all known combat protocols. Surrender it for study, or we will destroy every ship in this sector. Miller looked at his crew, then at the Admiral's hologram. Sir, request permission to show them exactly why breaking protocol can be a good thing. The Admiral was silent for a long moment. Around them, the fleet's modern warships moved into defensive formations, their standardized systems preparing for battle in exactly the ways the Dominion would expect. The fleet's tactical computers are having trouble integrating your ship into their battle plans, the Admiral said finally. Your power signature is too irregular. Your weapons don't fire in standard patterns. By every measure we have, your ship shouldn't even be functioning. That's exactly why we'll win, Miller replied. We don't just break their expectations. We break the rules they don't even know they're following. Roberts spoke up from her engineering station. Admiral, that energy pulse we used earlier, I think I know how to make it bigger. A lot bigger. But we'll need the fleet to protect us while we power it up. The Admiral's hologram straightened. Captain Miller, I'm giving you tactical command of this operation. Show us what that obsolete ship of yours can really do. As the massive Dominion command ship moved closer, Miller felt a surge of pride. The defiant spirit might have been scheduled for decommissioning, might have broken every rule in the book, but now those same violations might be all that stood between humanity and extinction. Anne, he called to engineering. Show them why different isn't always wrong. The defiant spirit's irregular power grid began to hum, building energy in ways that no other ship could match. Around them, the fleet's modern warships moved to protect the ship that had once been their laughingstock. As the battle approached, Miller knew one thing for certain. Sometimes the best weapon wasn't the newest or the most advanced. Sometimes it was the one that broke all the rules. The space around the defiant spirit erupted into chaos as the Stellar Dominion command ship launched its first attack. Energy beams thick as buildings cut through the darkness, their power enough to vaporize any normal vessel. But the Defiant spirit wasn't normal, and neither was its crew. Multiple smaller ships breaking off from the command vessel, Wilson reported, his fingers dancing across his tactical display. They're trying to surround us. Miller watched the enemy formation with growing understanding. They're still treating us like a standard ship. Look at their pattern. They're positioning themselves where our weak points should be. The fleet's modern warships engaged the smaller Dominion vessels, their standardized weapons and defenses meeting in a familiar dance of combat. But the Defiant spirit had a different dance in mind. Anne, Miller called to engineering. How's that power buildup coming? Almost there, Roberts replied, her voice strained with concentration. But Captain, I found something else. The ship's irregular power grid. It's not just adapting anymore. It's predicting. It's starting to generate defense patterns before the enemy even attacks. As if to prove her point, the Defiant spirit's shields shifted just before a Dominion blast reached them. The energy didn't just bounce off. It reflected back in a pattern that confused the enemy's targeting systems. Admiral Thompson's hologram watched in fascination. Their entire combat doctrine is based on predictability. They expect us to follow standard combat protocols because that's what their technology is designed around. Then let's show them something they've never seen before, Miller said. He turned to his crew. Release all safeties on the power grid. Let's see what this old girl can really do when we stop holding her back. The effect was immediate. Systems that fleet engineers had labeled as flaws came alive with new purpose. The asymmetrical weapon mounts created overlapping fields of fire that left no safe approach for the enemy. The irregular hull design, long criticized as inefficient, scattered enemy scanning beams in ways their sensors couldn't process. Sir, Reed called from communications. The Dominion command ship is broadcasting again. The mechanical voice seemed less certain now. Your vessel defies logical combat parameters. This cannot be allowed. You will be eliminated as an aberration. More Dominion ships poured out of the command vessel, each one targeting the Defiant spirit. The human fleet moved to intercept, but they were being pushed back by sheer numbers. Power buildup at 90%, Roberts reported. But Captain, there's something else happening. The ship's systems, they're starting to work together in ways I never designed. It's like they're evolving. Miller felt the deck trembling beneath his feet as the Defiant spirit's power grid channeled energy in ways that should have torn the ship apart. But instead of failing, the irregular systems strengthened each other. Each flaw covered another's weakness, creating a whole that was stronger than any standard design could achieve. They're launching their main weapon, Wilson shouted. The Dominion command ship's front section split open, revealing a massive energy cannon. The weapon began to glow with a light that made the bridge crew's eyes water even through the filtered screens. Anne, Miller called. We need that power now. It's ready. But sir, it's more than we expected. The ship's irregular design, it's amplifying everything. If we release this much energy, she paused. Well, we're about to really break some rules. The Dominion weapon fired, releasing a beam of pure destruction. At the same time, Roberts activated the Defiant spirit's power surge. The two forces met in space, but what happened next defied every combat scenario ever written. The Defiant spirit's irregular power grid didn't just release energy. It released chaos. Waves of power rolled out in patterns that changed every microsecond. Where the Dominion weapon expected to find resistance, it found nothing. Where it expected empty space, it found shields stronger than any ever recorded. Their weapon is destabilizing, Wilson reported, his voice filled with awe. They can't maintain the beam pattern. Our irregularity is causing their systems to adapt. Roberts finished for him. But they can't. Their whole technology is built on unchanging patterns. They don't know how to handle something that keeps changing. The Dominion command ship's weapon overloaded, the feedback causing explosions along its massive hull. Smaller ships scattered, their formation breaking apart as they tried to process what was happening. Status of the fleet, Miller asked. Holding position, Reed replied. But sir, they're all reporting the same thing. The energy patterns from our ship are affecting their systems too. Everything's starting to behave unpredictably. Admiral Thompson's hologram smiled. Maybe it's time our fleet learned that some rules are meant to be broken. The Defiant Spirit's power surge continued to grow, its irregular patterns spreading through space like ripples in a pond. Each wave carried the lesson that had saved the ship from the scrapyard. Sometimes the best solution was the one that broke all the rules. Dominion ships are retreating, Wilson announced. All except the command ship. They're trying to copy our power signature. They can't, Roberts said with certainty. Their systems are too rigid, too standardized. You can't copy chaos. You have to embrace it. The Dominion command ship tried to move, its massive engines flaring. But the Defiant Spirit's energy field had done more than just overload their weapon. It had introduced uncertainty into their perfectly ordered systems, and their technology couldn't cope with the change. Sir, Reed called out, new transmission from the command ship. But it's different. Multiple voices, all talking at once. The bridge speakers came alive with a cacophony of mechanical voices, each one repeating the same message in increasing tones of confusion. Error. Parameters exceeded. Combat protocols invalid. Reality does not match predictions. Miller watched as the massive ship's lights flickered, its systems unable to handle the concept of unpredictability. Send them a message, he ordered. Tell them sometimes the best way to win isn't to follow the rules. It's to break them in just the right way. The Defiant Spirit hung in space, its irregular design now a beacon of victory rather than a mark of shame. Around it, the human fleet began to understand what Miller and his crew had known all along. True strength didn't come from following every rule, but from knowing which ones needed to be broken. The Dominion command ship drifted powerless in space, its once mighty systems corrupted by the chaos the Defiant Spirit had introduced. Around it, the human fleet held position, their crews still trying to understand exactly what they had just witnessed. The irregular warship that had been headed for decommissioning had just changed the face of space warfare forever. Main power is returning to normal levels, Roberts reported from engineering. Though I have to say, normal has a whole new meaning now. The ship's systems are still evolving. Every power surge taught them something new. Miller stood from his command chair and walked to the main viewport. The Dominion command ship was massive, its dark hull now marked by flickering lights as its crew struggled to restore order to their rigid systems. Status of the enemy vessel. Their main computer is trapped in a logic loop, Reed answered from communications. They built their entire technology around predictable patterns, and now those patterns are broken. They can't even raise their shields without their systems trying to adapt like ours, and failing. Admiral Thompson's hologram appeared on the bridge, his expression a mix of disbelief and admiration. Captain Miller, I've just finished briefing Fleet Command. They want to know exactly how an obsolete warship managed to defeat the most advanced alien vessel we've ever encountered. Miller smiled. By being exactly what they labeled us, irregular, unpredictable, and wrong by every standard measure. He turned to face the hologram. Sir, permission to board the Dominion command ship. I think we need to see exactly what our chaos did to their systems. The Admiral nodded. Granted. But be careful. We still don't know much about these aliens. The boarding party assembled in the Defiant Spirit's launch bay included Miller, Roberts, and a small security team. As they approached the alien vessel in their shuttle, Roberts couldn't stop taking readings on her portable scanner. This is amazing, she said, showing Miller the display. Their ship is trying to copy our irregular power patterns, but their hardware can't handle it. It's like teaching a computer that only knows straight lines to understand abstract art. They docked with the Dominion ship through an emergency airlock. Inside, they found corridors lit by flickering lights and walls covered in displays showing error messages in alien script. The few crew members they encountered seemed disoriented, their methodical minds struggling with systems that no longer followed rigid rules. The ship's command center was a massive chamber filled with crystalline computers and holographic displays. Alien officers moved in confused patterns, trying to restore order to their chaotic systems. Their leader, a tall figure in an ornate uniform, approached the human boarding party. "You have corrupted perfection," the alien commander said through a translation device. "Our systems were flawless, based on unchanging universal constants. Your vessel has introduced irregularity." Robert stepped forward, her scanner still taking readings. "Your mistake was thinking that perfection means never changing. The universe isn't built on unchanging patterns. It's built on adaptation." The alien commander studied them with multiple eyes. "Our civilization has conquered 12 star systems using predictable, calculated warfare. Every species we encountered followed logical patterns. Until that incorrect ship of yours." "Not incorrect," Miller corrected. "Just different. And sometimes different is exactly what you need." A junior alien officer rushed up to their commander, displaying a holographic readout. The alien language meant nothing to Miller, but the commander's reaction told him everything he needed to know. Their perfectly ordered civilization was facing something it had never encountered before: uncertainty. "More of our ships are reporting system failures," the commander admitted. "The irregularity is spreading through our network. Ships that have never encountered your vessel are beginning to show signs of adaptation. We cannot allow this to continue." "You don't have a choice," Robert said, checking her readings again. "Your entire fleet is connected by quantum networks, isn't it? When our chaos affected your command ship, it spread to every vessel linked to your network. They're all learning to be unpredictable now." Admiral Thompson's voice came through Miller's communicator. "Captain, we're detecting massive energy fluctuations throughout the Dominion fleet. Some of their ships are starting to show power signatures similar to the Defiant Spirit." The alien commander sank into what appeared to be a command chair. Centuries of perfection, undone by a ship that should not work. The translator couldn't quite capture the emotion in the alien's voice, but it sounded almost like wonder. "I can help you," Roberts offered, surprising everyone. "Your systems aren't failing. They're evolving. They just need guidance to handle the change." Miller watched as his chief engineer began working with the alien technical staff, teaching them how to embrace the chaos she had spent years perfecting. The Dominion's rigid technology slowly began to adapt, finding new ways to function that their designers had never imagined. Hours later, back on the Defiant Spirit's bridge, Miller read the preliminary peace agreement that had been drafted. The Dominion, their perfect military hierarchy shaken by the introduction of uncertainty, had chosen to negotiate rather than risk further corruption of their orderly universe. "Fleet Command has canceled the decommissioning order," Admiral Thompson announced, his hologram looking pleased. "In fact, they want the Defiant Spirit to become the prototype for a new class of warships. Ships that embrace irregularity instead of fighting it." Roberts looked up from her engineering station, where she had been documenting all her unofficial modifications. "They do realize that means breaking about half the regulations in the fleet manual, right?" "I think," Miller said, "they've learned what we knew all along. Sometimes breaking the rules isn't just an option, it's the best option." The Defiant Spirit's irregular power grid hummed with energy, its systems still learning and adapting. The ship that had been marked for destruction had instead changed the course of human history. Its flaws had become strengths, its irregularities had become advantages, and its willingness to break from tradition had saved countless lives. "New orders coming in, Captain," Reed announced. "We're being assigned to work with the Dominion technical teams. They want to understand how our ship thinks." Miller smiled. "Tell them they're asking the wrong question. The real question isn't how our ship thinks. It's how it taught their ships to think differently." As the Defiant Spirit moved into position alongside the Dominion command ship, its asymmetrical design no longer drew mocking stares. Instead, it stood as a testament to the power of breaking expectations, of finding strength in being different. The ship that broke every rule had not just survived, it had changed the rules of warfare forever. And somewhere in engineering, Anne Roberts was already planning her next set of impossible modifications, ready to prove once again that sometimes the best solutions were the ones that everyone else thought were wrong.